So my name's Hardeep Singh Sahota. So part of the Woven Festival, I was invited to Alison to meet with some of the other collaborators and the artists. So I met with Boff and Mandeep and Alison for the first time to kind of share some ideas. We wanted to celebrate the migration stories of the South Asian community, and we thought it'd be nice to use an art form called boliyan, which is the female kind of version of singing, as opposed to Bhangra dancing. It was more like Gidda and boliyan. So the boliyan kind of became key for a vehicle to kind of tell this story. And straight away I thought, we've got some fantastic talent within Huddersfield to actually bring these stories to life. So our first bit was to do a little bit of research. So Mandeep and I went and did some oral history. So we interviewed some women who'd worked in the textiles mills, and it's really nice listening to these stories and that kind of their struggles of what it was like working in these mills, and how there was this kind of overarching story of those difficulties, and then them kind of either sticking up for themselves or kind of just adapting, and then kind of overcoming those prejudices, and then actually just celebrating their work and kind of becoming an integral part of the textile industry here in Huddersfield. So once we'd finished that, we ended up going to Swaran Kaur, and she created boliyan in Punjabi, which expressed the poetry that had been written. What was nice was Boff actually summarised a lot of these oral histories and actually created some beautiful poetry, and you use that song as a kind of a starting point to actually express those ideas. So we got some women together. A lot were family who'd actually experienced working in the mill, and we practiced boliyan here at the University of Huddersfield. We met on a regular basis, and we came up with our composition, which is part of Woven into Song. So it was really exciting. A lot of people had a lot of nerves. It was the first time some of these women from the boliyan group have ever performed in front of an audience. So it was really kind of important. Not that it was perfect, but the fact that they had this experience. And we had a few rehearsals, and it was just beautiful being inside like a church spirituals place, having that lovely acoustics was really nice, and the choir it was just joyous to hear the choir and then the boliyan come together. Yes, it was fantastic. So what inspires me creatively is music, is dance, is people, connecting heritage and history, because I see myself first and foremost as a Sikh Yorkshire lad. I've got this rich cultural heritage here in Yorkshire, here in Huddersfield, and I want to celebrate that along with my Punjabi roots and the other heritage that I can draw upon. And it's that kind of bringing together and celebrating something new, creating something. So the Woven into Song was probably one of the world's first contemporary boliyan that had been created. And for that reason, that really excites me to create something new, but then still have a link with heritage and the community.
Okay, my name's Boff Whalley, and I got involved in Woven because I was asked to kind of bring together this idea of having choirs and different parts of culture that happens in Kirklees, and take music from different places, from South Asia and from Huddersfield Valley and everything, and the history of the textile industry, and try and throw it all together in a big bowl of music and see what happens. It's trying to, because we live in a time where there's lots of talk about economic migrants, and there's lots of issues and discussion about that at the moment. Even just around the Kirklees Valley area, there are two fantastically huge instances of economic migrants, which is the people from the countryside in the sort of 1800s having to come into the industrial centres to find work. And then later there was the economic migration from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, people coming over to England, especially to the northern cities, to find work. And so it's trying to take those two ideas and say something about them musically. So it's like throwing all these ideas together, and especially with Hardeep and Mandy, and they've got a group of singers together, and it's called a boliyan, and it's a group of women. They're Indian women, and they tell their stories, and they're telling the stories which come from the interviews, and it's fantastic. And it's in Punjabi, so I can't really understand any of it, but it sounds brilliant, and I really love it. And that, without, you know, excuse the pun, it weaves into the stuff I've been doing, which is writing for choirs. So a choir are going to sing about the kind of old 17th, 18th century migration into the city, and the boliyan singers are going to tell the story of the migrants from India coming over. I realised that music wasn't just there because it can be lovely and pleasant and interesting and great to dance to. It can be there to tell stories, and it can be there to tell some real stories about people's lives, and it's people saying, okay, this is what's happening in my life now. It's not just I've fallen in love or I've got a new car or whatever. It's history, and it's the history of common people as well, and common people don't get a lot of looking in a lot of history. So if you look at song, it's brilliant because suddenly there's a whole wealth of people telling their stories in song about whether they've been working in the fields or whether they're you know, on strike, you know, in Manchester or whatever. So suddenly these songs have a much bigger purpose than just being entertainment. They're also about telling our stories, and those stories are incredibly important to keep retelling and passing down. One of the things I love about it is that some of the old people in the choir, they're all just started telling stories about everybody who's worked in the mill and what kind of jobs they did and how proud they were. They were like part of something much bigger than them. And in a way, that's what this festival is. It's like, I get to do this little bit with Hardeep and Mandy, but we're just part of something that's much, much bigger, and that's really nice.
Patchwork